I'm going to show you how to make this little necklace with the pendant. Now this pendant is embroidered. And this is the back. We did a little brick. I did a little brick stitch around it to secure the ultra suede onto the Lacey Stiff Stuff, and encased it in some pearls on top and seed beads. I always like to, whenever I'm going to use a cabochon or rivoli or anything, and I'm going to actually embroider it, I always like to bring my pearls over the top so that I'm not dependent upon the glue to hold my cabochon in. The glue is just there to hold it while I work. And then when I'm done, of course, the beads and all the measures I take to secure it will hold everything into place just fine. And this is done with an amethyst cabochon. And I just did some simple stringing on the back and a little unit of right angle weave to extend my necklace around my neck, and a little extension here, and some little fringing through the brick stitch on the back here. So this takes several steps. So we're going to do this in several steps as I create it. I'll probably do it through a couple of days, and I'll just film as I'm creating this. We haven't done any embroidery on my channel yet, simply because it does take so many steps, but it is one of my favorite ways to work through things. Now with this one in particular, it's a little bulky on top. I'm not it turned out okay, but I'm not particularly happy with the way that the 11-0 seed beads are between the top pearls. So I'm going to change that in my next one, modify it to 15-0s, and see if that changes it a little bit. And I will modify my design as I make my next one, because when you use a cabochon, and this time I'm going to use this labradorite. It's a really nice quality labradorite cabochon. However, it's a couple millimeters smaller than this one. This one measured 24 by 18. This one measures 23 by 17. And you'll find that that's why I don't do a lot of tutorials with cabochons and different things that are different sizes that aren't always calibrated, because it's difficult for people to follow and find the same exact sizes of stones. So I'm going to modify this to fit and try to do the same design and show you how I modify it, so that whatever size stone you're using, if it varies in a few millimeters, then you can figure out how to do this design for that stone. So we will be discussing that during this process. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at our material list. So today you're going to need some Lacey Stiff Stuff. It comes in sheets, and I've just cut a little piece off so that it's quite a bit wider than my cabochon, just so that I have plenty of room to work with. So you'll just want to get a sheet of Lacey Stiff Stuff. You can find it online. You can find it on eBay. You can find it in most of the big bead supply stores. So get yourself a couple sheets of Lacey Stiff Stuff. And then you'll need some ultra suede for the back, because you want to finish the back of your necklace like this. You don't want this Lacey Stiff Stuff with all your threads hanging out. So you will cover it with the ultra suede. I'm just using a tan color. And you can also, again, find this online everywhere. You can find it on eBay. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in bigger beading stores. So get yourself a sheet or two of this in whatever color you like. It comes in lots of different colors. You can also get Nicole's bead backing if you'd like. It comes in different colors. Because I didn't have a color in Nicole's bead backing that matches my labradorite very well, and because you don't see the way I've done it, I've encased it, you don't really see the bead backing anyway, so it doesn't really matter for this. But you can get it in different colors, and you can get that online. It's called Nicole's bead backing. Then you will need a cabochon, of course, and the cabochon I'm using today is a labradorite. I'm going to give you a close-up because it's really a pretty labradorite. I bought this at a bead store locally here, and it wasn't cheap, but it's a nice stone, so I'm going to use it. This stone I measured is 17 by 23 millimeters. So, and the last stone I used in this one was 18 by 24. So I'm going to have to modify slightly to make sure that my labradorite will fit. But like I said before, all cabochons you find are going to be a little bit different. And I doubt seriously you're going to find exactly what I'm going to find to do your project. So we will discuss modifying embroidery as we do this. Now, after you have established what cabochon you want to use, then we will be doing some clasping. Of course, I'm going to use silver today, and this one I used copper, but this is a little sterling silver heart-shaped clasp. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use 2 wire guardians, and I'm going to use 2 jump rings today. These jump rings are about 3-4 millimeter, and it doesn't really matter. You can use what size you like. And then we will be using 6 millimeter round glass pearls. This is a butter color glass pearl. We will be using 11 O's and 15 O's, also some 8 O's. I forgot to put them out, but we will also be using 8 O seed beads, and I will also use mine in the galvanized silver tone. So make sure you have 11 O and 8 O and 15 O out. These are all Toho, and they are the galvanized aluminum silver tone seed beads. Then you will need a bicone crystal, 4 millimeter. I'm using a Swarovski, and it is black diamond. Then you will need 3 millimeter round glass pearls. Mine is also a better colored glass pearl. You will need some E6000 or some kind of hobby glue that works comparable to E6000. You will need some tacky glue to put your ultra suede on. And you will need, I use a dowel or something similar just to spread my glue out so I don't get it all over my fingers. So I have a dowel. You will need scissors and a pair of flat nose, chain nose, or 2 chain nose, 2 flat nose, whatever, to open and close your clasping, your jump rings for your clasping. You will need 8-pound Fireline. That's what I'm going to use. You can use 6 if you'd like. For this project, you can use Nymo too if you would like to use something that matches your beads. I have all these different shades of Nymo, but I kind of prefer, especially when I'm working with crystal and stuff, I kind of prefer my Fireline, so I'm going to use Fireline. However, I could use this Nymo and blend it in with my pearls really well, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to use 8-pound Fireline, and I'm going to use a size 10 beading needle, and I'm going to go ahead and thread about a wingspan. I can tie on if I need to, but I'm going to start with a wingspan of 8-pound Fireline. And I'm going to set all this aside, and I'm going to show you how to begin this embroidery project. So you're going to use the piece of Lacey Stiff Stuff you cut, and just put your cabochon in the middle, and get your E6000 out. And then we're just going to put a little bit, you can see where the tag was on this. I tried to clean it off, but I don't think it'll affect much. I'm going to put a little bit of my glue on here. So much for not getting it on my fingers. It's already on my fingers. I like to keep a washcloth or something close by, just some kind of thing that you can throw away later when I'm using glue, because I am messy with it. And then I'm just going to spread the glue out rather evenly with my dowel, and then I'm going to place it on the center of my Lacey Stiff Stuff. Squeeze the excess out. If you have any that squeezes out of the sides, then just wipe it with your little cloth. And then you're going to let that set for about an hour. Okay. And we'll be back. So what we are going to do, we're going to set this aside a little bit. We're going to kind of cheat. Instead of doing a back stitch all the way around this, we're going to kind of cheat and just string our base layer of beads to go around this cabochon. This is the way that I do it, so I can adjust the amount that I need for the size bead that I have. It works almost every time, and it's a little bit of a way of cheating, but it does work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some 11 O seed beads and some pearls. And I'm going to pick up 2 11/0s and a purl, and then 2 11/0s and a purl with the 3mm rounds here. I don't know if I said that, but that's what we're going to be using, and our 11/0s. And I'm going to try doing a series of 10 pearls with 2 seed beads in between. Now that's what I did for my last one. It may be too big and I may have to modify down to 9, but I would like to keep an even number if possible because it makes a nicer circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So keep going until you have 10 pearls. You want to start with your 11/0s, end with a purl, no matter how many you put on here. Now let's get a little closer. Now we're going to take this and put it around the cabochon and see how well it fits. Let's do this. Let's bring it down to the end of the thread here. And then I will sew through just the first couple beads so I can make a circle and fit it a little bit better around my cabochon. So I'll bring it down and just leave a couple inches tail, and I will go through the first couple beads, hold on to them and the tail, and pull this down into a circle like so. Now I can put it around my cabochon. We're going to have too much slack, so I'm going to try to do 12 beads and see what happens. That may be too big. So we'll just open this back up and we'll add a couple more beads and see what happens. 2 11/0s and a purl and 2 11/0s. Of course I can go down to 15/0s too if I need to, but I'd rather not because I'm going to sew through these beads a lot. And 15/0s with 8-pound Fireline size 10 beading needle, it's a little difficult. So we're going to do the same thing again and go through a few beads here, pull it tight. It's actually okay. It's a little bit big, but once I pull my beads forward with my bezel, it'll be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and sew around all of these again to secure them, and I'll do that off camera, and then we'll come back and we will attach to the Lacey Stiff Stuff. Okay, so I've sewed all the way around them, and then I just went a few beads past my tail so that it doesn't slip too badly. It might slip a little bit. I may need to tighten as I do this. Now I'm just going to place it around my cabochon. And I'm going to go as close to the cabochon as I can. I'm coming out of this purl right here. I'm going to go as close as I can to the cabochon. I'm going to go through my Lacey Stiff Stuff and pull my thread through. And then I'm going to bring my thread back up on the other side of the purl as close as I can to the cabochon. And then I'm going to go through the purl and through the next 2 11/0 seed beads. The first one is a little tricky just because everything wants to move, so I'm just going to hold it the best I can and then anchor it down like that. Pull my thread tight, tighten my tail, and then again I'm going to go as close as I can to the cabochon. I'm coming out of this side of the purl here. I get just a little closer for a few minutes. I'm going to go as close as I can to the cabochon, right at the end of the purl, and pull my purl down. And then I'm going to go to the other side of the purl, close to the cabochon, and come back through. Now you want to be as careful as you can. You're not going to get these precise, but you want to get as careful as you can so that your base unit isn't all wobbly and weird looking. Then you're going to come back up through the purl and the next 2 11/0s and the next purl and pull Then we're going to go back down through the Lacey Stiff Stuff and pull. Then we're going to come to the other side of the pearl, come up through the Lacey Stiff Stuff, pull, make sure you have really good tension, and then go back through the beads, the pearl that you are attaching, the 11-ohs and the next pearl, and again go down through your backing, pull, and then up through the back on the other side of the pearl. Oops. Through the pearl and down through the next one, the 11-ohs and the next pearl, and continue doing this all the way around until you've completely mounted this onto your backing. And you can see, that's just from my glue, but you can see how the thread is on the back here, just like that. Now let's continue attaching our little strand to the backing, and we'll be back. So I have attached my base units here to the backing completely, and now I'm coming out of the backing right here on the other side of the bead where I've ended my first stitch. Now I am going to come back up through the pearl that I'm right next to, and the next couple 11-ohs and the next pearl, and exit just this next pearl here. And pull my thread through. Now I'm going to cut off this thread over here just to get it out of my way, cut off my tail, and we are going to begin a series of right angle weave between just through the pearls, attaching them together and building them up so that we can go over the top. Now in my last one I did this with 11-ohs. I am going to do it with 11-ohs and 15-ohs this time, so that the 15-ohs are on the very top and the 11-ohs are on the bottom of my weave. I'll show you what I mean. Now each unit of right angle weave needs 4 beads, so I have one that I'm starting with. I'm going to pick up an 11-oh and a 3mm pearl, and then I'm going to pick up a 15-oh and a 3mm pearl and a 15-oh and a 3mm pearl and an 11-oh. So this is what you should have on your needle. You will have 15 3mm, or actually 11-oh 3mm, 15-oh 3mm, 15-oh 3mm, and 11-oh, just like that. So the 2 center beads will have the 15-ohs around them. And then we will bring this down and we will come back through the pearl, and just the pearl. Which can prove to be a little difficult because I put these on nice and tight. So I'm going to pull through here, just like this. And that's what you should have. And back off just a tiny bit because it's annoying that close. And then we're going to pick up an 11-oh, and we're going to pick up a 3mm round and an 11-oh, and we're coming out of this pearl right here after attaching our little unit of right angle weave. We're going to go directly into the next pearl on our base, and just the pearl, and come through it and pull this down there we go. It's twisted, sorry guys. There. Now you can see, I'll get it close so you can see, it's laying right between the pearls on the base. So we're coming out of this little 3mm round now. We're going to make another unit of right angle weave, and we're going to attach to this unit. So we're going to have 2 beads in our unit. So instead of picking up 3 this time, we'll pick up 2 3mm. We're going to start with an 11-0 seed bead because on the bottom of our base we want 11-0s, on the top we want 15-0s. So I'm going to pick up an 11-0, then I'm going to pick up a 3mm round, then I'm going to pick up a 15-0, and then a 3mm round and a 15-0, just like this. Then I'm coming out of this purl here, I'm going to go down into the one on the little right angle weave unit we made on the top, and I'm going to pull these beads down like so. Now we need to add an 11-0 and go down into this bead to finish our unit. So we're going to pick up an 11-0. We're going to avoid this little funny thing we put down here already after our making our unit. So we're going to go down into the bead on the base unit, the original bead right here. We're going to go down into it, the 2 11-0s after it, or actually just into the purl, sorry. Don't go into the 2 11-0s. Just the purl, pull it tight, like so. So now you have 2 complete units on the side here. Now, let's back off just a little. We are going to travel from this purl to this purl so that we can do our next unit. So we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead. We're going to pick up a 3mm round and an 11-0 seed bead. We're traveling from this purl to this purl, the very next one in our base. Come up through that purl, avoiding the 11-0s on either side, and pull this little embellishment down like this. And then we're going to make another unit. So we're coming out of the purl here, we want to attach to this purl here. We need to have 4 in our unit. We have 2 on our piece already. So we will start with an 11-0 because we want 11-0s on the bottom. Then we will pick up a 3mm round, then a 15-0, and a 3mm round, and a 15-0. We're coming out of this purl here. We're going to attach to this one here. So we're going to pick this up, go down through the purl. In order to finish our unit, we now need an 11-0, and then we can go down into the base purl that we started in. So we'll pick up an 11-0, and we will come through this base purl. I don't know if my fingers are in the way here. And just the purl. And this takes a little time, guys, because it's not exactly easy to get through the beads because they're tight next to each other. So just keep at it until you get it. Let's do it slow and easy so you don't pull your cabochon off of your backing. And then that's what you should have. So we're now coming out of the 3mm round in the base. We need to travel to the next 3mm round. We'll pick up an 11-0 seed bead. Then we'll pick up a 3mm round and an 11-0 seed bead. And we will travel to the next 3mm round. We will do one more unit, then we'll do the rest of them until we get to the last unit, and I'll show you how to attach it off camera here. Well, I'll show you on camera, but we'll do the rest off camera. Okay, so now we're ready to make our next unit. We're coming out of this little purl here. You're going to pick up an 11-0, a 3mm round, a 15-0, a 3mm round, a 15-0. Come in, you're coming out of this purl, we're going to come into the last one on the previous unit we just made. Just the purl. Pull through. Then we're going to pick up an 11-0, go down into the base unit purl, and just the purl on the base unit here, like so. Pull them down, make sure nothing's tangled. That's very good. Now we're going to pick up an 11-0, a 3mm round, and an 11-0 and travel into the next purl. And you're going to continue making these units until we get to the last unit, and I will show you how to connect the units together on your last one. So continue going until you get to this purl here, and we'll be back. So as you can see, I've gone all the way around. Now this, I've made my last unit here. I have one, I've made my next to the last unit here. I have one purl left that I have to embellish. I'm coming out of the purl on the bottom from my second to last unit here. So I need to travel over to this purl here. And just like we've been doing, we'll pick up an 11/0, a 3mm round, and an 11/0, and we'll travel over to the next purl. Now these are getting tighter and tighter as we do this, so it takes a little bit of work to get through this very last purl here. I'm going to come through it at an angle here, trying to avoid my 11/0s on either side. And pull it through. Now you may need your flat nose. It's just the angle. It's not really thread tight, it's just the angle. Okay, now in my last unit here, I have a purl on the bottom and I have the 2 on the side. All I really need to add is my 15/0s and my top purl. So what I'm going to do is I have to get over to this purl, so I need to pick up my 11/0 because we have 11/0s on the bottom sides here. So I'm going to pick up an 11/0. I'm going to travel up through this side bead here and pull. Then I'm going to pick up a 15/0, a 3mm round, and a 15/0, and then I'm going to come down through this side right here, just the purl, pull it through, and then I am going to go through this purl right here. But I need to add an 11/0 before I do, so I'm going to pick up an 11/0. Just got to make sure we have the same beads all the way around, so we have to add the beads we're missing. In this unit, all you're missing are your bottom 11/0s, your top 15/0s, and your top bead, so that's all we're adding. So now we're going to go through the bottom purl here and just the purl, which, like I said, can be tricky on the last one. Let's see if we can get through him. There we go. And because of the angle, it's tight. And like I said, it's not really thread tight. It's just the angle and how tight the beads are. So pull it through gently here. And now you have your last unit on the side. But we need to make our last bottom embellishment. We're coming out of this bead on the bottom here. We need to go into this bead. So we'll pick up our 11/0. Oops, that's a 15. 11/0. Purl, 11/0, and slide into the next purl here. And now the bottom embellishment is complete and the top is somewhat complete. We need to draw it together now. And what we're going to do that is we just have to travel up to the top. I have a little bit of slack in my thread over there. Ah, not good. Okay. So we're coming out of this bottom purl here. We're going to go up through this 11/0 on the side right next to it and the purl itself on the inside here. We'll pull that up through, come through the little 15/0 here, and then sew through all the purls and the 15/0s on the top, and we'll draw them together the best we can. Now this is not a tight top embellishment. It is a little bulky, but it actually turns out okay. I was concerned when I did my last one that this was going to be too bulky, and I had considered just leaving the 15/0s off the top embellishment, or actually I did it with 11/0s, so I have decreased it with 15/0s on this one. But I would consider maybe leaving them completely out and then putting a 15/0 between each one as I traveled through. But it does work. It looks okay. It's a little bulky, but it's kind of pretty that way. It's kind of old-fashioned looking, so I'm going to leave it. And we're just going to travel all the way through all of these beads on top here. This cabochon is a little bit smaller than my last one that I used. And I did originally use 12 in the base also, so this may be a little looser. And we may have to reconsider, but I'm going to try it and see how it goes here. Okay, so this is what I was talking about, modifying to fit different cabochons. Now, my last cabochon was just a tiny bit bigger, so it filled in the top embellishment that I just made better. Even though I went down to size 15-0s, the diameter is still a little too wide. So what I'm going to do, now if it fits your cabochon fine, you can quit at this point. If it does not, if it's loose like this, we're going to do one more little tiny embellishment to draw this together. So what I'm going to do to modify it to fit this cabochon is I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. I'm coming out of this pearl here. I'm going to go into the next pearl on top, and just the pearl, and I'm going to pull the 15-0 in between. And I'm going to do this all the way around and see if it tightens. If it does not, then I will have to redesign, remodify to make sure that I can get this around my beads a little tighter. It doesn't have to be extremely tight on the other one. It was holding it in fine. It was pretty. But it does need to be tighter than it is on this one. So I'm going to just go through and put a 15-0 all the way around between the pearls and see what I get. And once I have finished doing that, we'll be back. Okay, so I have done my 15-0s between my pearls all the way around and pulled them tight, and then sewed a few more beads past where I started. And actually I can live with this. This isn't bad. This is nice. It's going to hold everything together. Like I said, it doesn't have to be extremely tight, but it has to hold pretty well. A little bit of movement is okay because it's just a fancy bezel. It's not really, it has to be holding it all together because you have your backing holding it together. So we're really good here. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of movement. It's nice. It stays together. It doesn't do anything weird. So this is going to work. And this is one of the reasons I don't do a lot of embroidery instructions, is because sometimes you just have to think through it. You just have to, most of the time when I'm doing it, it's just guesswork all the way through. I just do whatever I can to make it work, make it pretty, whatever embellishments I want. I don't pre-plan anything when I'm doing embroidery, so I don't usually do it online. However, I wanted you to see the process of how I do it. So now I'm coming out of this pearl here. I want to get down into the pearls beneath. So I have to get into these little bottom 15-0s here, which can be a trick. I have to get into just one right here so that I can bring my thread down and put an embellishment between my bottom pearls in my bottom embellishment. So now I'm through this 15-0. I'm going to go through this pearl right here and the 15-0 beneath it. And then I'm going to go through the bottom pearl here on my base. And then I'm going to slide up this 11-0 here and the 3mm round on my bottom embellishment. And now I'm ready to begin my crystal embellishment on my outside. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and then one of my black diamond 4mm crystals and an 11-0. And then I'm just going to go from this bead to this bead, and I'm going to do this all the way around, placing my crystals. So 11-0, and then bead and 11-0, or crystal and 11-0. They're all beads, I guess. Let's see. If I like that, I might switch to 15-0s. Let me see. I did 11-0s on this one. I'm going to go around a little bit and see if I like that. If I don't, if I want them to be closer, I may switch to 15-0s between there. Let me do a couple more. And this will be your personal taste. If you like the way it's looking with the 11/0s, if you like it to kind of stick out, then that's fine. If you want it to be a little closer in towards your piece, then pick up 15/0s. I think this is probably going to be okay. So I'm going to go around it, and if I change my mind, I'll put 15/0s between them, but I'm going to go around it a little bit more and see what it looks like. So we're going to do this entire embellishment until we get to the end. So I did change my mind. I have decided that I'm going to do a 15/0, a 4mm round, and a 15/0 between each embellishment here. Now if it pulls it tight and buckles it weird or something, then I'll change my mind back. But it worked a little differently on my last one. On this one, it seems to be that the 11/0s kind of poke them out a little bit further than I want to. So I'm going to do the 15/0s all the way around, and then I will be back. Okay, so I finished my entire embellishment on the outside here. I'm coming out of this crystal here. I put this one on and just slid through the next one. And now I'm going to go through the 15/0 on the other side of it, and if I can. I should have slid through the 15/0 too. Oh, come on. Go through the 15/0, and I'm going to exit this purl right here. And then I am going to sew up into the 11/0 on the main piece, or on the, right in between here. I'll show you where I'm at. I'm just going to sew up into this 11/0, get back to my base units here, go through it, and then I'm going to go through the back of my backing. So I'm going through this purl and I'm going through my backing. It's a little too far. And stay real close to your cabochon as you come through. Do that again. There we go. Okay. Now I am going to tie a knot in my backing. So I'm going to go over to one of these threads and I'm going to tie a knot, pulling my thread over. Now you want to stay real close because we're going to cut this stuff off and you don't want to cut your thread. So stay as close to your cabochon as you can and tie it a couple of times. Okay. Straighten out your backing. Now, I like to leave a little bit of extra and melt it down because that's another knot that isn't going to come through this backing. So I'm going to melt this down into a big blob. And now that's not going to go through my backing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this backing and I'm going to cut it just on the inside of my last embellishment. So here I am, right here, just underneath my last embellishment. And you want to watch that you don't get your threads, so you want to stay a few millimeters away from your sew line, from your base units, and just cut it around. And once you get it off, you can straighten it up, make it a nicer circle. Just make sure you don't cut your threads at all. And leave it a couple millimeters away from your threads. Straighten it up and make it look as good as you can as far as your circle is concerned. Like so. I got it a little lopsided. My back's going to be a little lopsided over here. And then what I like to do is we're going to put our backing on. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try to draw a little circle just to give me kind of a guide. So I guess we need a pen too in our list here. So I'm just going to try to find my bead backing and just go around underneath my last embellishment and just draw somewhat of a circle. Not a great one. And then I will roughly cut it out. Let me back off. I'm way too close. And it doesn't matter because you can put the pin to the inside, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like. I'm just going to kind of roughly cut it away like that, and then I can fold it together and even out my circle. That's not going to be perfect, but it's close. And then I can put it onto my back. And once I get it on there, I can cut it closer to my backing too, and then I'll do my brick stitch. So it's close enough. What I'm going to do, I want to leave the edges a little bit anyway, so that I can put my thread back through and start up again on my brick stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little tacky glue, and I just put a little bit, I dip into my bottle and put a little bit on my dowel, and then do it a little neater than I did it. I got it a little deep in there. And then I just go inside the area where the thread line is. So I just go inside the thread line circle. And I leave the outside couple millimeters away from the thread line just open so that I can manipulate my thread between there. So I'm going to put this on here. And I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes, and then I will trim it down, and we'll start our brick stitch. Now, the reason I don't like to get the tacky glue all the way out, number one, is because I can slide my thread in between and start my brick stitch, and you won't see where I started my thread, number one. Number two is if you get this tacky glue all the way to the end, and you let it harden, you don't get your brick stitch done while it's soft, you won't be able to sew through it. It's just too hard to sew through. So leave it a little long and let it dry for a couple minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, so now this is tacked on here pretty good. I'm just going to bring it back a little bit, and I'm going to sew it closer, I'm going to cut it closer to the Lacey Stiff Stuff so that I can sew them together with a brick stitch. So all I'm doing is just trimming my little circle that I cut bigger than need it to be of the ultra suede, and I'm going to trim it up as neatly as I can. Like so. So it's pretty much lined up with my Lacey Stiff Stuff. And you can get pretty picky with this. I'm not going to get real picky on camera because it's boring to watch, but I just don't want it to be really straggly looking. To look pretty good. That'll do for now. And you can see it's lined up pretty nicely. So when I do my brick stitch, I will go through both. Now we will put another long length of Fireline on our needle. And probably at least a wingspan would be good. And I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle again. And then what I will do is I will melt the end of my thread, make a nice big lump in it so that I have a knot. So there's a big lump in my Fireline. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that will serve as my knot. That will not go through, make it a little bigger actually, that will not go through my Lacey Stiff Stuff and my suede here, my ultra suede. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach down, because I left it, the edge of it, loose a little bit. I'm going to reach down between the two, because all I did was tack the center, so I can reach between the two layers, and I can pull that knot in between the two layers, and then you won't see it at all. And then I'm just going to sew up through. I'm going to make sure I get both layers. I'm going to start on at the suede side and just come through, and I'm just going to pull this around like this. Now I'm ready to start my brick stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up two 11/0 seed beads. I'm going to do this all in seed beads. And I'm going to pick up two like this. I'm going to go through the suede and the Lacey Stiff Stuff right next to where I'm coming out here and pull these down. And then I'm going to go up through the bottom of the second bead that I put on. So I can come around the front here. Just bring your thread around the front so it doesn't tangle. And then come through the second bead, just like this. And pull. And then pick up one 11/0 seed bead. Go through the stiff stuff and the ultra suede as close to the other one as you can. Well, you know, just enough room for another bead. And then bring your thread in front of it, go through it like this. And pull. And line it up like that. Now I'm going to get even closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm coming out of the top of this bead. I'm going to pick up my next bead. I'm going to go through both layers of material here. I'm going to bring my thread around and then I will just come directly up through. It's easier to make my hand work. I bring my thread in front of my beads and then I go up through it like this. One more time. Pick up an 11/0 seed bead. Go down through both layers, fairly close to your last bead. Pull through. Then bring the thread to the front of your beads. Come up through the bottom. Pull it down. I kind of push on them and arrange them, make sure they're nice and neat, just like this. This is what you should have, like this. See how neatly they're lining up? So you want to kind of make sure you put your needle through in the same depth on your ultra suede as you did the one before. So let's pick up an 11/0. We'll do it really close. Pick up an 11/0. We'll go through the ultra suede and the stiff stuff. Pull the bead down. I bring my thread in front of the bead. This way it doesn't tangle and it's easier access for my hand. Then I will go up through the bead. Sometimes it helps if you hold on to the bead, then you can just kind of push it down too so it doesn't travel up the thread. And you're going to continue doing this all the way around until we get back to where we started. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished my brick stitch all the way around. And I'm coming out of my very last one right here that I just put on. So what I need to do is join it with my first one I put on. You can see it's kind of dangling there because, as you remember, we put on two first, and that one just kind of is not exactly in the perfect position. But that's okay. We're coming out of the top here. We're going to go through the top of that first bead, just like this. We're going to join the last and the first bead together, like so. So we've come out of the top of this one, into the top of this one, then we're coming out of the bottom of our first one, we're going to go into the bottom of our last one, and pull them together, like so. And I'm going to do that twice. So I'll go back into the first one, and then back into the last one I did. Okay, so now that we've joined our brick stitch together and we're coming out of the little bead after joining it, right here is where I'm at. I'm going to flip it over and show you what we want to do next. Now, on this particular cabochon that I did, what seems to be lining up pretty central are my bicone crystals. On this one, the pearl was central. So what I'm going to do is whatever you have that's most central on the long part of your oval cabochon is the one that you will put the longest fringe on. So we're going to start putting our fringes like this on the bottom. But we want to get over to, we will center it between, like the outside of this bead will be the shortest one, the longest one will be the center of this bead, and then the next shortest one will be over here. So what I'm going to do is I am coming out of this bead here, I'm going to go down into the next brick stitch bead, and then I will come out this one next to it. So I will go down the next one. Make sure I'm actually going into a bead here. Like so. This is where I will start my first fringe stitch. And you can see I'm just right on the outside of this bicone here. So I will start my fringes and then I will make each one longer until I get right central of this bead. I will make that my longest, and then I will start subtracting beads from each fringe, and I will make them exactly the same as I do on this side, on this side. On this side I will add a bead each time until I get my longest strand, and then on this side I will subtract. I will make them exactly the same on either side. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming out of this bead right here. I'm going to pick up 4 11-0 seed beads, and then a bicone crystal and a 15-0. I'm going to drop these down to my brick stitch, just like this. Then I'm going to go around the 15-0 into the crystal and all 4 11-0s, and then back into the brick stitch bead, like so. And I'm going to pull it down, and then I'm exiting the one that we just put the fringe on. I'm going to go into the next brick stitch bead right here. Then I will pick up, this time I'll pick up 5 11-0 seed beads. I'll just increase it by 1 bead. If you want your fringe to be a lot longer, I think that's what I did on this one. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we're just going to increase it by 1. If you want it to be longer, you can increase each one by 2, or whatever you feel like you want to do. It doesn't really matter. It's just the look that you want. So we're going to pick up, actually I picked up 4. We're going to pick up 5 11-0 seed beads this time, and then a crystal, and then a 15-0. And we're going to drop it down to our work, like so. Put my 15-0, just like this. I'm going to back off a little bit so I stay in frame here. I don't think I need to be that close anyway. And then I am going to go around the 15-0 seed bead and back into all of the 11-0s. And at this point I can do them all at once because there aren't that many. Then I'm going to go back into the brick stitch on my cabochon here. I'm getting a little bit of my material too, just the way I sewed it in there. So if you need to use some flat nose pliers to pull it through, that's fine too. So now I have 2 fringe, and I'm going to go down into the next brick stitch bead, like so. And I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and pull this through, because I have a lot of thread right there. That's where I joined my beads, so it's quite a bit of thread, which I'll cover with this fringe stitch. You won't be able to see it. Under magnification it looks like more than it is anyway. Now this time I am going to pick up 6 beads, 6 11-0s onto my needle, and then a bicone crystal, and then a 15-0. I'm going to drop this down to my work, And I will go around the 15-0, which is still on my needle. Go around the 15-0, and I will go up all of these beads again and into the brick stitch. Okay, I have to apologize. The electricity went out right as I was putting this fringe stitch in. So I have added my 6 beads and come up through my brick stitch bead here. And it's the end of April. It's like April 29th, and it is snowing. It's been snowing all day long, and the electricity is flashing on and off for the last couple minutes, so hopefully my footage is good. Anyway, I'm coming back through the next brick stitch, and I'm going to add 7 beads this time. So I'm going to pick up 7 11-0 seed beads, and a bicone crystal, and a 15-0 seed bead, and drop them down. And I will make sure I have 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yep. And this one has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yep. Okay, we'll go around the 15-0 again, and back up through all the beads, and back up through the brick stitch right here. And now, if you turn it over, you will see my next one is going to be pretty central of the middle bead here. Let me see what it looks like. Yep, that's going to be right in the middle of this bicone crystal, which is the middle of my piece. So I'm going to make this one 8 beads long. Let me see if that's the middle. Yep, and that will be my longest one. So let's pick up 8. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It just flew off my needle, guys. Yep, I'm having a good time here. Okay, so now I'm going to drop these down. And I'm going to go around the 15-0 and back up through all of the beads and back up through my brick stitch. Now, since this is my longest one, I will start subtracting a bead, and on each one the strand will get a little shorter. So we will continue this off camera. Now we will go into the next brick stitch, and we will put in 7 beads, and then the one after that we'll put in 6 beads, the 11-0s and the crystal, of course, and then 5, and then 4, and we will be finished with the fringe. So go ahead and do that off camera. Now, if you've done your fringe differently than me, just make sure that once you get to your center point, you do the opposite side exactly the same as you did your first side. And we'll be back. Now, these fringes look a little shorter than these. They're actually done with the same amount of beads, but because of the way I did my backing, on this one my backing is a little bit longer. This one's a little bit closer to the cabochon, shorter, so it shortened my fringing a little bit. Now, I could have gone ahead and used more beads and made them a little longer, but actually it's okay. I do like the look of these being a little bit longer, but I think this is going to be fine. So keep that in mind if you cut it really close to your cabochon. If your backing is real close and doesn't have a whole lot of length to it, then you may want to add a few more 11-0 seed beads if you want your fringe to be longer. I actually think it's okay. So I am coming out of this little 11-0 seed bead now after doing my last fringe. I'm going to go up through the next one here. I'm going to make sure they're all nice and tight. My very last one won't slip. And I'm going to grab the thread bridge on top of the brick stitch here, right between the beads. And I'm going to tie a little knot right here. And then I'm going to sew back into a few of these beads. Like so. So I'm just going to go back into the brick stitch a little bit here to make sure that everything is nice and tight and secure. And you can sew through as many beads as you want. Try not to grab your backing because you'll get it bunched up. And then I'm just going to cut my thread off here. I will tie on to my backing up here so I can sew through. I could sew through all my brick stitch and come up to the top and then sew through my main work so that I can start the top of my necklace. But I have decided that I'm just going to cut this off here, and I'm going to burn this down so that it won't go through my backing and it'll be secure. It's another way of knotting it, just like that. And that part is done. Now I'm going to put another long length of thread onto my needle, and probably at least a wingspan. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, let me get you close so you can see. I'm going to get to my Lacey Stiff Stuff here, and I am going to put a knot at the end of my thread so that my thread won't slip through and I can start again. So I'm just going to make a blob, some heat here, and I am going to find my center bead. Now this one isn't perfectly centered, so I am going to use this bead here as my center. So I'm going to be working out of these two beads to make my attachment. So let's see. Yes, this one and this one will be what I'll attach to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get close to this bead. So I'm going to go into my bead backing right by the little pearl in my base here so I can sew up through it and get to my outside embellishment. So I'm just going to go into my Lacey Stiff Stuff like so. I think I'll go from this side. And just grab some of that and pull my thread. Now see, my thread is tight and it's not going anywhere. Alright, so let me back off. And now I'm going to sew into my base units under here. I'm right by this bead right here, this pearl, so I will go into it, this little pearl here. And I'm just going to try to just go through it. So I'll put my needle at an angle here and push it through the front of just this base unit pearl here. Now it's at a funny angle, so I am going to pull it through like that. Pull my thread through. And now I am coming out of this little pearl right here. You can see, if you can see it, right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew up into my outer fringe here. So I'm going to go through the 11-0 right on top of this bead here. And then I'm going to go this direction actually because that's the way my thread is kind of going. So I am going to, no, actually I am going to go this way. So we're going to go up into this little pearl here and over to the little crystal on the other side of it. So let me go through here. Nothing is cooperating with me tonight. Sorry guys, I'm tangling and everything. My electricity is going off. Jeez Louise. Okay, so we're going to go into this crystal right here. Right here. Now I'm going to back off again. And let's see how I want to do this. I am going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. And on the other one I used a pearl, but this time I'm going to use a crystal because I'm coming out of a crystal. And then I'm going to pick up 3 more 11-0 seed beads. I'll show you what's on my needle in a minute here. Then I'm going to pick up a 6mm round pearl. And then 3 more 11-0 seed beads. So I've got 3 11-0s, a crystal, 3 11-0s, a 6mm round. Then I'm going to pick up 3 more 11-0s. And then I will pick up a crystal. And then I will pick up 3 more 11-0s. So, I'm going to bring this down and show you what I have. I have 3 11-0s, bicone, 3 11-0s, 6mm, 3 11-0s, bicone, 3 11-0s. And I am just going to go over to the bead on the other side. So I'm going to skip this one, I'm coming out of this one, I'm going to skip this one, I'm going to go over to this one. And I'm going to go to the outside of it because I'm coming out of the outside of this side. So we're going to go through that bead and pull this secure here. Now we want this to fall behind the crystal so it's fine where it's laying. Then we're going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads and we're going to come up through the first crystal here. Like so. Just like that. Then we're going to go through the next 11-0s. So I'm coming out of the crystal here. I'm going to go through these 11-0s and the pearl and pull. And then I am again going to go through the 3 11-0s on this side. And then I'm going to exit the crystal. And then I will pick up 3 more 11-0s onto my needle. And I will go through the inside of this crystal. So my thread is coming out of this crystal, and my main connection I'm making is coming out of the outside of this crystal. I want to go back into this crystal on the inside. And then I'm going to push this behind the crystal I'm coming out of. Now we're going to tighten this all up, make it look nice and neat here. And we're going to sew back up until we get to the pearl here. So I'm coming out of this crystal here. I'm going to go up the 3 11-0s and the bicone and the 3 11-0s on the other side of it and the pearl, just like this. And I'm going to do the same thing over on this side just to secure this. So I will go through these 3 and the crystal and the outside beads here, because this is our connection. We want to make it strong, plus this will tighten everything up and take away all the slack that's in it. And now I need to go up through the 3 inside beads here. And then I'll go through the crystal and back up the 11-0s and exit the pearl. So now I'll go through this crystal and the 3 11-0s on the other side of it and up through the pearl. And that is our connection. We're just going to push it behind the crystals like this. Now if you would like to, you can add 4 on the outside instead of 3. That's what I did on my last one because you can see a little thread here. Under magnification, you're going to see it a lot more than you see with your naked eye. But if you would like to, you can add 4 on the outside to tighten this up. And that will help with that too. Okay. So now I'm going to make a unit of right angle weave here that I can work out of to make my strands for my necklace. So I am going to pick up an 11/0 and a 6mm round and an 11/0 and a 6mm round and an 11/0 and a 6mm round and an 11/0. So we need 3 more beads and we want 11/0s on either side. So start with an 11/0 and with an 11/0. Have 3 6mm rounds with 11/0s between them on your needle. And then you're coming out of this side of this purl. We're going to go into the opposite side of the purl. And just the purl. Avoid the 11/0s on either side. And then pull your thread through and form a nice unit like this, and then sew back through the entire unit, making sure you get all of the beads, including the 11/0s, on your second round here. Okay, then we're just going to put a little crystal embellishment on top of our unit we made. So the way I want to do it is, I accidentally came through an 11/0 here. I don't want to go through this 11/0. I just want to be exiting the purl. So I'm going to go back through here. So after you come through, you'll be exiting this purl here. Make sure you don't get any 11/0s. And then you will pick up 3 11/0 seed beads and a bicone crystal and 3 11/0 seed beads. We're coming out of this side of this crystal, or of this purl. We want to find the opposite purl and go into the opposite side. So if I'm coming out of this side, I'm going to go into this side now. And pull this across like so. Then I'm going to pick up 3 more 11/0 seed beads and I am going to go into the crystal here. Now this embellishment can get loose if you have any slack in your thread, so make sure your tension is good on this. You're coming out of the crystal now. You're going to pick up 3 more 11/0 seed beads, and you're coming out of the crystal, you're going to go into the opposite side of the purl we started in. So we started on this side, we're going to go into this side now, and try to avoid all the 11/0s on the other side of it here. And just pull your seed beads down. Tighten it up so that everything is nice and neat, just like this. And then you're coming out of the purl right here. You're going to go up into the 11/0 seed bead and the next purl on this side here. And pull. Then we're going to start our strands. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another 3mm purl, and then we are going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead, and then we will pick up a crystal and an 11/0 seed bead, and drop them down. And this is the beginning of our strand. Now if you look at this one, you can see that I did a series of the larger pearls with the 8/0s, but I started this way with my 3mm and an 11/0 and a crystal, an 11/0 and a 3mm. So we'll pick up another 3mm. Now you can do this stranding any way you want. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of my large pearls. So I will start with my 8/0s, and I will put an 8/0 between each pearl, and I will just string these until I get 8 of them, 8 of the pearls with 8/0 seed beads in between each pearl. And then I will put on a crystal, an 11/0, a crystal, an 11/0, and then I will do 8 more large beads, and then I'll do an 11/0, a crystal, an 11/0, and 8 more large beads. So we will do this off camera, and just remember, you will just do 8 in each section with 11/0s and crystals in between each section, and you will make 3 sections. And I will show you again when we come back. Okay, so I have made my strand now, and like I said before, 8 pearls with 8/0 seed beads in between, and then an 11/0, a crystal, an 11/0, 8 pearls, 11/0 crystal, 11/0, 8 pearls. Now you can do this as long or as short as you want. Just put it on your bead board and measure it. I think that my necklace turned out to be about 18 inches. Let me see. Mine is actually a little over 18 inches, or not quite. Actually, it's right at 18 inches. So to hang about over 20 with the pendant down on your chest. So mine is 18 inches with the amount of beads that I've shown you. Now you can make it as long or as short as you want to make it. It doesn't really matter. Just make your sections the way I've made them. Make more or less. Or you can do sections with 6 pearls and a crystal in between, or however you want to do it. You don't even have to put any crystals in. Just make a strand as long as you want to make it. And then when you get to the end of your strand, as long as you want it or as short as you want it, then you're going to pick up a wire protector. But I would like to protect the end of my bead here too from my wire protector. So I'm going to pick up an 8/0 and then an 11/0 to put on the end of my strand, just to protect the end of my pearl from my wire protector. So I am now going to go through one side of my wire protector like this. Let's get a little closer. I'm going through one side. I'm going to pull the thread through it. That didn't go through. Okay, let's do that again. One through one side here, and I'm tangling on everything again. There we go. Okay, so now I've got my thread through one side. Now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to go through the other side. And I'm going to just go through the wire protector, and I'm going to squeeze the wire protector and guide my thread down into the divot on top and pull it down to my beads. And then I'm going to go through the 11/0, the 8/0, and I'm going to start going back down my strand. But I'm just going to go through a couple of pearls. I'm going to hold on to it so I can tighten up my wire protector. Make sure there's no slack at all, like so. And then I will close my wire protector to the size of the 11/0 on top of, that it is laying on top of, like this. Got a little carried away there, but just squeeze it shut and don't deform it like I just did. And then start sewing back down. We're going to sew down this entire strand because this is just one length of Fireline. Though it's strong, it's really not strong enough to string on. So we are going to just come down all of our beads. I'm exiting right here, and I'm just going to start sewing down all of my beads in my strand, and make sure that you don't miss any or it'll pull your necklace funny. And you just want to make sure your wire protector doesn't have any slack in it on the end. And just keep sewing all the way down. So all the way down the entire strand until you get to the end, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have sewn through my entire strand of beads that go up around the neck, the necklace portion. And I'm coming out of this little 11-0 at the very end here, right underneath my crystal. I'm going to go into the 3mm pearl that lays on top of my 6mm pearl here, and I'm going to also go into the 6mm pearl and the 11-0 in the original unit that we made between the beads here. And then I'm going to go into the bottom pearl here. And you can turn this over if you'd like, and you can see your original beads better. So I went through that 11-0, I went through this pearl, this 11-0, this pearl. Now I'm going to go through this 11-0 and this pearl, and I'm just going to exit the pearl, just like this. Turn it back over. And then I'm going to start my stranding exactly like I did on the other side. So I'll pick up my 3mm round, and then I will pick up an 11-0, and I will pick up a crystal, and then I'll pick up an 11-0, and then I will pick up a pearl, a 3mm round, and then I will pick up an 8-0. So you want to just look at your other strand and make it exactly the same. So I'm right there. And now I'm going to start doing my 6mm rounds and my 8-0s, and I will just copy this side exactly. When you get to the end, you will put on your wire protector just like we did on this side. Remember to put on your 8-0, your 11-0, your wire protector, sew all the way back down through, and we'll be back after you've done that. Okay, so I have finished my second strand, and I am now coming out. It's this side over here, so let me get over here. I am now coming out of the very last bead in my strand, the little 3mm bead that we very first put on actually, and I'm going to sew down into the pearl beneath it. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to make sure my strand is tight. I'm going to grab a knot right between these beads here in the little unit of right angle weave here. Pull the knot down, and then I'm going to sew around this unit again. And I will grab a couple knots and just sew around it a couple times, then I'll cut my thread off and burn it down. So go ahead and do that, and then we will be back to put our clasp on. Okay, so I have sewed through my little unit here and tied off a couple of times, and then cut my thread off. And then I burned it down so that it would make a blob and make sure that it would be secure. Now I'm going to add my clasp to the end. So all I'm going to do is pick up a jump ring, and I'm going to open my jump ring and find my other pair of pliers here from side to side. And as I've said before in other videos, these jump rings aren't very good, so I'll have to take it off later and actually cut them to fit correctly because they're not cut right. I'm going to slide my jump ring onto the end of, or onto the wire protector, and then slide my clasp, one end of my clasp onto the jump ring, and close the jump ring from side to side. These jump rings are just not cut very well. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with the other half of the clasp. Open my jump ring, slide on the jump ring, slide on the clasp, and close the jump ring the best I can for what it is here. Oh, come here, you. Very bad jump rings, very bad. They're not cut correctly, so they don't close correctly. Okay, but anyway, for the moment, this will work. And I will show you what we just made. So, clean up my mess here. And let's see if I can get it all in the picture here. Let's clasp it correctly. That is what it looks like. I don't have enough room in my picture. Let me turn it this way since I've been turning it around. Anyway, this is what we've made. Let's get a close-up so you can see it one more time. And let's get the other one in the picture here. So basically, you just have to modify things as you do them when you're doing your embroidery. So see, you can tell this one's bigger than this one, but it turned out okay. I do wish I had made my fringe a little longer on this one. However, that's okay. It turned out all right. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and make yourself a nice little pendant, or at least give it a shot. Have a good night. Bye-bye.